Today we're doing 10.2 rational exponents. So we are going to go ahead and start. I want you guys to make sure that you are reading the notes. I am going to go over the examples. Please read the notes. We are going to use exponential notation for nth roots. And let me go over what this means. You can write a square root, an nth root, a cube root, any type of root, this index right here. And you can write it as a power with an exponent that's a fraction. So if I have the fifth root of 101, that means that this 101 has an exponent of 1 right there. So my base is 101. My fraction will be whatever this part is here, it's going to be 1 over 5. So that is just a way to write something that is in exponential form, writing it in a power that happens to have a fraction. All right, so if you guys could go over that, I want you to read through it, but I want to go ahead and get started on some of the problems. And here we go. So for example, number 1, I could rewrite this as the fifth root of 32. Now, if I wrote it at the fifth root of 32, remember in 10.1 at the very beginning, lecture video A, I told you that the fifth root of 32 was 2. Now, if you guys didn't know that, what you could do is this. If I have 32 to the 1/5, the way you guys can simplify this is if you had a power raised to a power is you multiply the exponents. So the number 32, I can simplify it. So 32, I can write it as 2 to the 5th power. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 16 times 2 is 32. So we know that 2 to the 5th power is really 32. Now we can use the rules for powers. When you raise a power to a power, you multiply the exponents. So my base is 2, and then you end up with 5 times 1/5. The 5s cancel out and you're left with 1. So 2 to the first power is 2. So that is just one way to do the problem. Another thing, for 64. 64 to the 1/2 power, that is just the square root of 64. And that gives you 8. Now, once again, over here, if you wanted to use powers, you could do that. So we all know that 64 to the 1/2 power. We all know that 64 is 8 squared. So 8 squared is really 64. Now we have 8 squared raised to the 1/2 power. So my base is 8. 2 times 1/2 is 1. So your answer is 8. So again, if you don't want to turn it into a square root or a fourth root or whatever it happens to be, you could do what I'm doing right now onto the sides here. Now this problem here is a negative on the outside. Now everyone, the negative is on the outside. The only thing that's to the 1/4 power is 81. So I'm going to have the fourth root of 81. Okay? And we know from, like I said, the list that I told you that you had to memorize. So that's going to be a negative. The fourth root of 81 is 3. So a negative times 3 is a negative 3. Once again, the negative is on the outside. So no matter, I'm just going to ignore that for a moment. And I'm just going to deal with 81 to the 1/4 power. The negative is on the outside. So I know that 3 to the 4th power is the same thing as 81. When you raise a power to a power, you multiply the exponent. So I'm going to get 3 to the first power. So you end up getting -3. Okay? Now the next one, this one here, we have a -81 to the 1/4 power. Well, this one's a little trickier because first of all, I need a number and I need it to be, first of all, there's no numbers whatsoever that's going to give me a -81. So -3 times -3 is 9. 9 times -3 is -27. -27 times a -3 is 81, not -81. So on this problem, you're going to get an imaginary number. At this point, I don't think they're really worried about you understanding, not a negative number, but an imaginary number. So we could break this up and it would give you I, but you would have to do a lot of work on it. You're basically having -1 to the 1/4, and then 81 to the 1/4. So you could break it up as a product of powers. So we know from prior learning, this is just I. After you do a whole bunch of math, it ends up being I. And then this one here is 3. So your answer would be 3I. Now over here, we have the cube root of, my dog is barking, I'm so sorry. Okay, so on this one here, we have a -4 raised to the 3rd power, which is raised to the 1/3 power. Remember, a power raised to a power, you multiply the exponents. So I end up with -4 to the 1st power because 3 times 1/3 is 1. So my answer would be -4 on that one. Now on this one here, I would get 1 to the 3rd power over 3 to the 3rd power, because that's just 1 and that's just 27, raised to the 1/3 power. So 1 to the 3rd power raised to the 1/3 power, you multiply the exponents. So you're going to get 1 to the 1st power, and you're going to get 3 to the 1st power. So your answer is going to be 1/3. No big deal. Again, if you wanted to write this out as the cube root of 1 over 27, you could. And the cube root of 1 is 1, and the cube root of 27 is 3. Does not matter how you do the problem, but you can use powers to help you find the answer. All right. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Define the use expressions of a to the mn power. So this is kind of like, again, you have a power raised to a power, you multiply the exponents, all right? And here we go. All right, so on this one here, you have 2 options. You can take the 25 to the 3/2 power. This denominator is the exponent on the 20, I'm sorry, the 3 is the exponent on the 25. The square is letting you know that it's a square root. This denominator is a square root. So this is the square root of 25 cubed. All right, everybody, that's all that means. Now, you can break this up as 25 squared times 25 to the 1st. That gives you 25 to the 3rd. I can take the square root of 25 squared, that's just 25. The 25 comes out. And then I'm left with the square root of 25. The square root of 25 is 5. Now, 5 times 25 is 125. And that would be my answer, 125. But you guys, that is way too much work. the way I would do this problem is this. I have 25 to the 3 halves. I know that 25 is the same thing as 5 squared, and that is to the 3 halves. When you raise a power to a power, you multiply the exponents. So that's going to give you 5 to the 3rd power, because the 2's, 2 times 3 halves. The 2's cancel, and you're left with 3. That's where I got the 3 here. 5 cubed is just 125. So that is another way to do it. And that's how I would do it. I wouldn't waste my time making square roots, cube roots, whatever it happens to be. It's just time consuming. So now on this problem, I'm going to have something to the 2/3 power. The 2/3 power is right here. I need to rewrite 27. I know that 3 cubed is 27. That is totally 27 to the 2/3. Now, when you raise a power to a power, you multiply the exponents. So that's going to leave me with 3. 3 times 2/3. Once again, 3 times 2/3. What happens is the 3's cancel, and you're left with a 2. So that's going to give me 3 to the 2nd power, which will give me 9. Same thing here. The negative is on the outside. Do not look at the negative. Then you have 16 to the 3 halves. Another way to write 16 is 4 squared. Okay? So what you're going to do is, we have a negative on the outside, and I end up with 4 to the 3rd power, and that's going to give you a negative 64. Okay? Hang on. My puppy is trying to get my attention. So the next problem, I need a negative 64. So I'm going to have a negative 4 cubed raised to the 2/3 power. So I end up with negative 4. 3 times 2/3 is 2. Negative 4 squared is 16. The next one, I end up with negative 36 to the 3 halves power. Remember, I just got to figure out what negative, I need to figure out how to reconnect negative 36. So let's try a negative on the outside, and this is going to be, it's the whole thing. So I've got to break it up a little. Like this, okay? So that's going to leave me negative 1 to the 3 halves times 6 squared, because that's 36, to the 3 halves. I just broke it up a little. And I'm going to I'm going to leave the negative 1 for right now. I'm going to do some work over on the other side for a second. This is going to be raised 2 times 3 halves is going to give me 3. So that's going to be 6 to the 3rd power. And it's going to leave me with, this is going to be 216 times. Now, if I have a negative 1 to the 1/2, and I'm going to multiply it by negative 1 to the 2 halves. When you multiply powers, you add the exponents. So that will give me 3 halves. Well, this one here, negative 1 to the 1/2, is I. This one here is just negative 1 to the 1st power, which is negative 1. So that's going to end up giving you negative I. So over here, this is going to give you negative I. So your answer is going to be negative 216 I. And that's it. I'm going to stop there for today, and